We are entering this unique era where a lot of younger artists are now entering the industry and providing their own voice. In a time where there's a lot to be cynical about when it comes to the film industry, I find those anxieties to be overshadowed by the overwhelming amount of young talent entering the sphere. In the last few years alone, we've had a lot of actors breaking into the mainstream with the likes of Jacob Elordi, Daisy Edgar Jones, Io Adebri, Paul Mescal. Some of the best films of the last few years have starred some of these very promising actors, but there's one actor that I want to single out today. I don't think she gets enough credit, and I'm of course talking about
Cailee Spaeny.
Cailee Spaeny.
Cailee Spaeny.
I'm Cailee Spaeny.
My introduction to Spaany's work was like many of you. I saw her in a little movie that released last year called Priscilla. I sat down in the theater and was just blown away by how she was able to pull off the many stages of a very tumultuous relationship over the course of over a decade. To see a 24-year-old playing 14 in one scene and 27 in another, and to have that time in between to allow that gradual transformation feel so natural, just astounded me. A few months later, I watched Alex Garland's newest project, Civil War, also starring Cailee, which is such a strikingly different kind of performance. It was loud, it was bold, it was so confident and so much more external. The way she was able to heighten the anxiety of an already very stressful cinematic atmosphere was astonishing. When I came out of that movie, I was just like, this is one of the greatest actors working today. Give her all the roles, I think I'm in love. She can just seamlessly integrate herself into well-defined filmic settings, surrounding herself with some of the most seasoned actors of all time, being directed by some of the greatest filmmakers behind the camera. At 26 years old and having only been in this industry for about 6 years, Cailee Spaeny already has 13 projects under her belt. She's been booked and busy from the very start of her already eclectic filmography. Born in Knoxville, Tennessee and raised in Springfield, Missouri, Cailee Spaeny started to pursue her acting journey when she dropped out of school at 13.
When you drop out of school at 13, you grow up really quickly and you realize I've got to sort of make a living. The only thing I was good at was performing or communicating in that way, and I always had a sort of chip on my shoulder about not sort of having the words to express myself, but I always felt like something opened up in me when I got on stage, or I was singing or dancing or performing in any sort of way, so it really was my comfort zone.
She spent years and years taking long road trips from her hometown to LA, years and years of auditions that came with countless rejections, until she ended up landing a role in a little movie called Pacific Rim Uprising.
Scrappers is not a toy, and she's not for sale.
If you have the chance, I recommend checking out her audition tape for this film. She's so locked in, throwing herself on the ground, using objects around her to interact with. It's just so fascinating to see how committed she was from the very beginning. From there, she just kept booking role after role. She already had like 4 movies lined up before Pacific Rim even came out. And keep this in mind, these were not like small independent projects. These were big movies with huge star-studded casts. She was launched into the mainstream from the beginning. I think there's something genuinely inspiring about that, when it seems like a lot of younger talent were either child stars that have since made bold and interesting career decisions, or their parents already had connections in the industry. It's very refreshing to see one of the most exciting voices in Hollywood right now literally coming from humble beginnings. I know that sounds cheesy, but it's true. That's not to say all the child stars and nepo babies are untalented or anything. I'm just saying it's really cool to see someone excel in a very competitive industry based on their dexterousness and raw talent alone. All I'm saying is I've been absolutely fascinated with Cailee Spaeny for a while now, and today I want to talk about why I think she's the most exciting force in Hollywood right now. Over the last couple days, I've watched every single project she's been in, 9 movies, 3 shows, 1 short film. Just for the fun of it, I'm gonna rank all of these projects from my least favorite to my favorite, placing an emphasis on each respective performance. So yeah, let's dive into these. Yeah, this is the worst movie Cailee's ever been in, without a doubt. The Craft Legacy is disappointing on so many levels, not because I necessarily expected a whole lot out of it, but because it had the opportunity to do so much more than it ended up doing. I had never seen the original Craft film from 1996, so for this video I decided to watch that movie first, so I had something to compare it to, and part of me wishes I didn't, because The Craft is like a million times better than this movie. Even though I just saw it for the first time, I immediately recognized The Craft as one of the most iconic staples of 90s pop culture. The fashion, the soundtrack, how unabashedly queer-coded it is, Fairuza Balk's delightfully unhinged performance, it's all just so pronounced and flashy and unapologetic. It was also incredibly progressive for the time in the ways that it tackled femininity and racism and toxic masculinity, mental health. While I do think it was very ahead of its time, I also think there were plenty of problematic elements that could have been more refined and more sensitively explored in this film. Unfortunately, it doesn't give us anything. Even though it is technically a sequel, it felt like a Disney Channel reboot. Like, this just didn't have any of the junk or stylization of that original film. It just didn't leave you with anything to chew on or to feel challenged by. What made that original special was that each girl felt distinct. They all had their own trauma that they were wrestling with, which helped us, the audience, understand why their pursuit into witchcraft is so important to them. Here, nobody really has a motivation. None of the characters in this ensemble stand out in any particular way besides Cailee's character. This was her first time being a lead in a movie, and I think given how mediocre this screenplay is, I think she did a really good job with what she was given. Cailee plays a character named Lily, a girl that just moved into a new town with her stepfather and explores her alienation from everyone at school, eventually being taken under the wing by these three girls, and explores her descent into witchcraft, just like the original. Cailee was undeniably the standout here, just wholeheartedly invested in this character and really brought a vulnerability that definitely helped elevate a lead that I found largely uninteresting on the page. Like, if you compare Robin Tooney's character to Cailee's, there's a huge difference in that emotional arc. I like how dark and mysterious Sarah is before the film even begins. It makes her turn to witchcraft feel more enrapturing rather than predictable. Lily is too wide-eyed and too naive to allow her transition to feel believable in any way. Cailee does have a couple of good scenes here where she really expresses some of the character's insecurities.
Who else would I have been up to, Mom?
It was your birth mother. It was the one condition that she had that I never revealed to you.
She is very good in this movie. As bad as this movie is, I will say that there's this really funny bit where they made Nicholas Gallett's scene woke.
Just the way she uses her artistry to deal with race politics and gender politics and still just makes like the sickest pop jams.
Like, they cast a spell on him that basically made him really interested in gender studies all of a sudden. Like, you could do anything with your powers, and you chose to make this white boy finally respect women. It was just very silly to me, but I don't know, I thought it was kind of cute, and it was just the right amount of goofy for me. Overall, this was literally just a modern retelling of the original, but they threw in a little surprise cameo at the end to tie the two together, so I guess it's technically a sequel, but I don't know, I don't think this film works at all. I cannot believe that this was Cailee's first film ever. I mean, the movie isn't good, like at all, but it's operating on a very large scale, and for this to be her debut performance, to go from having no experience to being the female lead of a sci-fi action blockbuster, is pretty massive.
Was it nerve-wracking at all to have this big movie be your first movie?
Yeah. I'm still freaking out. Even today, like, what's going on?
I thought she was remarkable in this movie. She plays a 15-year-old girl named Amara who is really efficient at like building robots and stuff. And the way Cailee just completely inhabits this character is wild. I could tell she was soaking up everything in real time. There's just this wide-eyed optimism combined with a whole lot of sass that really stood out to me.
How old are you?
I'm about to kick your ass.
Just really impressive work from an 18-year-old.
I'm not really good at emotional stuff, but I really am sorry about your sister.
I remember seeing the first Pacific Rim when I was younger, but I honestly don't remember anything about it, so this really was kind of my introduction into this universe, and I honestly can't really get wrapped up in it. I have a hard time getting invested in a film that visually emulates a video game. I appreciate all the time and the effort that the VFX artists put into this. That work often goes unnoticed, so I do want to give them a shout out. It's a very detailed world, it's just not very tangible, which made my eyes glaze over during any big action sequences. I watched all 10 hours of this show just for this video. Like, she's in it. She's certainly in it. She plays Anna Eleanor Roosevelt, the daughter of FDR and Eleanor, but she just kind of shows up every once in a while for 1 minute and then dips immediately. The First Lady is a miniseries that premiered on Showtime in 2022 and is basically centered on three First Ladies across different time periods. You got Eleanor Roosevelt, played by Gillian Anderson, Betty Ford, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, and Michelle Obama, played by Viola Davis. It just kind of cuts back and forth between these three different timelines, and it's all tied together by this vague hypothesis about why these powerful women were great people. And it's all very surface level white feminism that I found to be serviceable entertainment, but politically kind of dangerous. By the nature of the show being structured with three completely different storylines taking place decades apart from one another, there's always going to be storylines that you prefer over others, and personally I found the Betty Ford sections to be the highlight of the series. I just thought Pfeiffer portrayed Betty with like this fun mom energy, and it was easily the most entertaining aspect of this entire show. The Eleanor Roosevelt stuff contains some interesting insight into her very strange relationship with FDR, his infidelity, her infidelity, a thorough exploration of her repressed sexuality. It left you with a lot of stuff to ponder over, but it was just really boring. I'm sorry. Like I said, Cailee plays Eleanor's daughter, and she really doesn't get much to do here until the final episode where FDR dies. The standout moment is this final conversation between Anna and her mother.
Do you realize how lonely it is to be your daughter? All I've ever wanted was to be as interesting to you as the rest of the world is. Mother, please look at me.
Well, I don't want to look at you when you're upset.
Why in God's name did you have 6 children if you clearly have no interest in being a mother?
It's an emotional scene that was beautifully acted by Anderson and Spaeny. Outside of that, she doesn't get much to do here. Devs is very much not my thing. I get what it's doing, but I just can't get past the way Garland writes his characters. He does a superb job creating a thick, moody atmosphere. It's very ethereal, very drony, whispers reverberating in large rooms with soft lighting, lots of people delivering lots of jargon about quantum theory. It definitely conveys something. It just seems to have a lot of cool philosophical ideas, but couldn't really channel that fully into 4-dimensional characters. Everyone kind of talks the same, delivering a lot of complex lines in a relatively unnatural way. Any attempts at levity still feel stilted. Stephen McKinley Henderson and Cailee Spaeny's characters were definitely that fun supporting duo that at times provided that levity, but they just didn't get enough screen time to help soften the blow of some of the overwhelming seriousness of this show. They're both really good though. I love their rapport. It's so adorable. Cailee plays a young boy named Lyndon, and similar to the First Lady, doesn't get a whole lot to do here, but I do think with her limited screen time, she was able to portray this guy with a lot of delicacy. There's a timidness, a slight vocal quivering that she adds to make Lyndon's limited screen time feel long-lasting.
Why ask a question when you've already heard the answer? And I didn't want to know the future. It's not that strange. While I have the illusion of free will, I have the illusion of free will.
At this point in her career, Cailee had only done like 4 films, but this really feels like the first project she's been associated with that I would consider weird. Like it's this existential dystopian epic that explores themes of grief, the human condition, the meaning of life. As a career choice, that's a very interesting contrast to everything she did up to that point.
Using a fully deterministic interpretation for which we use a version of De Broglie bomb, pilot wave. And it works. Kind of.
And while I'm not a fan of the show, I really appreciate that it was made, and it really did showcase Cailee's range as an actor. There's a charm to the Hollywood biopic, a lustrous quality that takes real people and forces them into typical archetypes. You have heroes, you have villains, it's all very simple, very black and white. On the basis of sex fits snugly into that description. That charm is there for a good portion of the film, but it does wear off after a while. The intent seems fairly pure, but it's just bogged down by a pretty lackluster screenplay that was unironically written by a man. Cailee is so locked into this character, it's actually so funny. She did not need to go that hard, but she did, and it made her character far more entertaining to watch as a result. She plays Jane Ginsburg, the daughter of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and she's very sassy. She is such a hater for no reason.
You do exactly the same thing if you actually had a heart.
At one point, Jane says, "No way, Jose."
No way, Jose. Not in my experience.
There's this part where she yells at these dudes for catcalling her mom.
Oh, yeah, real nice. You kiss your mother with that mouth, asshole? Mom, you can't let boys talk to you like that. Taxi!
This movie is very rudimentary, but it's passionately put together, and there's a lot of solid filmmaking on display. To coordinate a shot like this takes a lot of time and practice, and I wish more people would recognize that kind of filmmaking, because even though it's seamless and you don't really notice it, it's very effective. From my knowledge, this is the only straight-up comedy that Cailee starred in. She's got that third Knives Out movie coming out next year, and this movie gives me a lot of confidence that she'll deliver in that area, because she is so funny in this movie.
You, Nate.
What?
Gonna fuck.
I mean, I don't know if we're gonna fuck.
You're gonna fuck.
Please stop saying that word. It feels inappropriate.
I really like this idea, and I think it's executed well in a lot of places, but the film also suffers from just kind of being this vignette type of comedy. A lot of small skits with famous comedians that are all kind of isolated from each other. Cailee plays the main character Liza's younger self, Liza being played by Zoe Lister-Jones, who also directed The Craft Legacy. She also co-directed this movie. Basically, the setup for this film is that the world is about to end, and it just kind of follows this woman in a metaphysical manifestation of her younger self, walking around LA as Liza talks to everyone she wants to make amends with, with and apologize to, and she meets a lot of wacky characters along the way, played by a lot of famous comedians. I think there is a balancing act here of having this very zen, chill style of humor as she talks to all these various characters while also having an emotional center, which could have been better executed, but I think for a film that's pretty low effort and bare bones, I think it works as it is. This movie was shot during the pandemic, and it's pretty obvious everyone speaks to each other at a distance, which means once you have that context, it makes it more fun to see how creative they get with having these characters avoid physical contact. It's very silly. The apocalypse is obviously meant to be a metaphor for the pandemic, and in a way meant to diffuse the anxiety surrounding that event. Cailee is so unbelievably charismatic in this film. She just has a presence that just lights up the screen. She's kind of a support system for our main character, and the way that her and Zoe bounce off of one another is very genial and amusing.
Oh, you're so aggravating.
Why are you being so intense?
Her little reactions as she buoyantly experiences the joys of life around her is adorable, and you can't help but smile. There's this moment where her and Liza see a woman playing a song on the guitar and asks them if they could sing a duet together, and it's so sweet. I love stuff like that. This film is very simple. There's not a whole lot of thematic depth to it or anything. I just thought it was cute, and I think more people should watch it. So this one's funny because she's technically in it, but they cut all of her scenes out and left like 1 2-second shot in, so I didn't even need to watch this movie. I could have just watched the deleted scenes on YouTube, which I did do. I will go back to that. I've gone on record in the past that I'm not a fan of Adam McKay's work. Not even just his recent political satires, but his comedies too. With the exception of like Step Brothers, I've never really enjoyed one of his movies. The best thing he's ever directed in my mind is the pilot episode of Succession, you know? I was not looking forward to watching this movie, but I was pleasantly surprised in how much I enjoyed it. This leaned into absurdity a little bit more than McKay usually does, which works for me a lot, especially when it's depicting political figures. The snark and the cynicism here just felt a lot more appropriate in this setting for me. From a comedic level, this just landed. So Cailee basically plays a 17-year-old Lynn Chaney, who was brilliantly performed by Amy Adams, by the way. They shot what is essentially a short film, giving us the backstory of how Lynn and Dick met in high school. It shows a little bit of Lynn's childhood, how Lynn basically betrayed her best friend and convinced Dick to break up with her. It was so mean and toxic, I don't know why. While I'm glad this exists, I have no idea why this was shot in the first place. It really wouldn't have benefited the film at all. It doesn't really corroborate with the film's thesis statement, so I don't really know why they bothered making this in the first place. Cailee plays this character with such a spitefulness that I found so diverting. It's very cool that she was technically in a big star-studded awards movie. Unlimited World is a 15-minute short film directed by Peter Falls and follows a woman named Lars in a codependent relationship as she kind of navigates her partner's alcoholism. This is a very simple short that communicates a very complicated emotion, and I really enjoyed it. I will say it's very frustrating to watch this man mistreat the most beautiful woman you've ever laid your eyes on. Like, that's not cool. Don't do that to my girl. There's such a sagacious subtlety that Cailee brings here that it just inhabits these silent moments. The moments in between the words, the vexation and the dejection all kind of pool together in these moments of quietude. It's a very tactful performance that honestly felt like the perfect audition for what she ended up doing in Priscilla. She just navigates the turbulence of this relationship with so much prudence. The way this film centers on this woman finding herself in the middle of a volatile situation is very honestly and earnestly executed. Civil War, the most divisive movie of the year so far. I honestly don't want to dive into the politics of this film very much. I don't even think there's much to celebrate anyway. I understand why people are frustrated with the fact that this barely makes a statement at all, and while that could make this feel empty, I think this very much stood its own ground and felt appropriately terrifying and sickening. At its core, it's about people taking national terror and glamorizing it, trying to get the perfect shot. Unfortunately, I just don't think it has much to offer beyond that in a thematic sense. We've seen so many films over the years explore the way passion can turn into obsession and can lead to moral inadequacy. Lee is someone that has already undergone this numbing of her passion, where she has become so jaded to a point where her morality no longer conflicts with her professional pursuits. Jesse kind of represents someone that is going through that process, by the end losing all sense of ethicality as the violence is tuned out. I think that's a good theme to tackle, but I've just seen it done so many times that it just didn't impact me in the way that it wanted to. I think this works as an intense road trip movie more than than a profound depiction of the fall of democracy. But once again, I do think Civil War works as an exploration of media exploitation, and yes, Cailee Spaeny is incredible. Once again, the way she is able to helm and internalize the horror of this inhumanity all through her face is really something to marvel at. The way that twinkle in Jesse's eye just gradually dissipates throughout the film, and innocence being lost in pursuit of something bigger. I don't know if this will make any sense, but she does this thing where she can like contort her face in such a way that causes her to look slightly different in every scene, which totally works for a character that is constantly evolving as she absorbs new experiences. I think it was very skillfully done. It's very subtle. She just has a face that was meant to be in the movies. I don't know how else to explain it. Bad Times at the El Royale was Cailee's second movie ever, and I still think it's one of her best performances to date. Before I go any further, I do want to play this clip from an interview she did for this film.
I'm always looking for something totally opposite from what I last did. I mean, I'm very new in the industry, but this was something that I'd never done before and I didn't know if I could do. So that's always really exciting when you read a script and see a character that you're like, I have no idea if I'm gonna be able to pull this off, you know? So it was a really amazing challenge to get presented.
This is crazy. For this to be your second film ever in an industry that is unbelievably competitive, to be able to say this with your full chest, that you want to get picky and choosy with your roles and challenge yourself as an actor when you've barely made it through the door, is a level of confidence I find so refreshing and inspiring. That is a luxury many actors unfortunately don't have, yet she said this right as her career was starting. I think at a certain point, you just have to know that you are that good, because that is an insane amount of confidence, and she's right to say it. In Bad Times, Cailee plays Rose Summerspring, a girl that falls in love with a cult leader played by Chris Hemsworth. While her exterior exudes innocence, once you look in her eyes, all you see are demons. She is so unhinged in this film, it's hilarious. She's this evil little gremlin that has done so many reprehensible things, and within a huge cast of eclectic characters, she blends in seamlessly and somehow is operating on the level of many seasoned veterans.
I know him. Well, he's dead.
That he is.
Bad Times at the El Royale is kind of a miracle, and it's a shame more people didn't see it when it came out. It's just so cool seeing a truly original, non-IP, mid-budget movie with a huge cast get made at all. This is such a great concept, but unfortunately it does stagger a little bit pacing-wise, like it spends a lot of time building tension, gradually revealing information, but more often than not it just takes time away that could go to developing a character's backstory. Like there's this one sequence towards the beginning where John Hamm is investigating this spot in the hotel, and it shows him walking up and down this corridor, watching these people in their rooms, but then it just keeps going and going and going. And I have no issue with measured pacing like this. I just struggle with the fact that there's so much time spent reveling in this reveal, but then it just doesn't spend enough time developing each character. It's just disproportionate, that's all. Which sucks, because I think if they just tightened some of these screws, cut off some fat, and added a little more context into each individual's motivation, this would have functioned as a mystery so much better. That's just my opinion though. I still really love this film despite some of its shortcomings. And who doesn't love that third act? Once Chris Hemsworth shows up, the energy just revs up. I still think this is one of Cailee's best roles to date. It's equal parts funny and disturbing to see this little girl casually roaming the background while violence is being committed all around her. She's hysterical. This is the most recent project here, and maybe it's recency bias talking, but I loved Alien Romulus. I understand a lot of issues that people had with it. I have plenty, but I thought this was still a very effective, old-fashioned creature feature, and its faults didn't really sour that for me. The Alien films over the years have gone in so many bold and new, interesting directions, but it was really rejuvenating to see one of these go back to basics. It teeters too far in nostalgia bait multiple times. That thing with Ian Holmes I found to be tasteless, but it also was just superfluous. Like, that character could have been played by anyone. Like, I don't know why they did that. I can understand how many folks found this movie to be pandering, but personally, I had a great time with it. So much of what I love about Romulus is that it's just so confident in these young actors. It just gives them all a chance to showcase their talents in a really contained and atmospherically effective way. This is kind of every actor's dream, right? Liminal space, a stressful scenario, and plenty of practical effects that they can easily react to.
Obviously, it was such a treat for us as actors. Fede really prioritized whatever was going to make it easiest for us, so we shot it chronologically, and then anything that could be practical was practical.
Cailee absolutely owns this movie. She really proves that she has that kind of star power with how she's able to convey a timorousness while also taking charge of the situation.
Stay behind me!
Her on-screen chemistry with David Johnson, who's also incredible in the film, really gave the whole experience a heartfelt center that held it together for me. I just love Rain and Andy, and I wanted them to be okay. I just adored this cast, and I think it looks gorgeous. It's so well directed, it's so well constructed. It's easily one of my favorite blockbusters of the last few years, and once again, it proves Cailee Spaeny is going to be around for a long time. After sitting down and watching through this woman's entire filmography, I decided to finish it all off by rewatching this movie that introduced me to who Cailee was as an actress, and this is still the best film she's been in to me. This is the film that she won the Volpe Cup for. It's what got her that Golden Globe nomination, and she deserved every sliver of praise she received for this performance. Cailee is awe-inspiring in this movie. She has to pull off the look of a 14-year-old girl aging all the way up to her 20s. You know, that's obviously a testament to having a phenomenal casting department as well as makeup and hair, but the little expressions she gives, the half smiles, the winces, the slight tears welling up in her eyes, do so much of the heavy lifting here. You really do feel that profuse elation when she meets Elvis for the first time. You feel yourself falling in love with him, or at least the idea of him. I mean, Sofia Coppola really did pull off what she set out to do. You really do understand why Priscilla was attracted to him in the first place. We see him vulnerable, we see him make her feel special, and it's very seductive. He sucks you into that whirlpool. And I think the way Cailee navigates all of this is very impressive, considering that the film was only shot in like 30 days, which is not long at all.
Because we only shot in such a short amount of time and we shot wildly out of order, it was really like, you know, I was pregnant in the morning and 14 after lunch. It was like depending on what wig I had on my head really was the thing that let me know where I was in her emotional arc.
As an actor, you really need to stay focused and fully throw yourself into a character, and that's very hard to do when everything is shot out of order and you're on a time crunch, yet Cailee makes it look easy. This movie makes me upset on like a visceral level, like it causes me to feel a specific kind of revulsion. The aesthetic is very muted and dimly lit. The spaces that occupy the frame often feel empty, effectively capturing the loneliness Priscilla experiences. This movie just spends a lot of time showing her trapped in this house, having everything she wants, but lacking the warmth that comes with attention she very much deserves.
Have I lost you to another man?
You're losing me to a life of my own.
The movie is repetitive, it's slow, it's mundane, and in a way captures the banality of this incredibly tempestuous relationship with a narcissist. It's quietly hellish and really does capture that vacantness. It's a very depressing film, but it's deeply honest and nuanced, and it's beautifully brought to life by Cailee Spaeny and Jacob Elordi. It's very much an actor's movie. Yeah, I think it's the best film she's been in, but there is one more project I do want to talk about that I loved even more. Mare of Easttown is such a deeply human story that was brought to life with such grace and vulnerability. A show about extracting truth, cutting through the noise and finding what's underneath the surface, both in the context of the investigation that unfolds on screen and in the context of the trauma internalized within these characters. It really takes its time to understand each of these characters. The way it gradually unweaves a web of immorality is so gripping. Cailee is only in the first episode, but her character is kind of the catalyst of this entire investigation and has a lot of significance to the overall narrative and how kind of the twists and the turns play out. For the limited screen time she does have, she gives a very perceptive look into this very tender person that is stuck in a tragic circumstance. The way she immediately gets you to fall in love with this person is staggering. It's very delicate and sensitive, making this character's minimal screen time have so much impact.
Sometimes I wonder if you even realize how much I love you. Your grandmama used to say, you'll understand when you're a parent. And I was always like, yeah, whatever. But now it's like you can love someone so much, it's scary.
It was honestly very hard to watch some of the stuff this character had to go through and kind of the people she had to interact with, the people that mistreated her. Cailee just brought a warmth and an innocence here that really heightened the emotionality of that character.
It seriously, almost made me start to cry. Because, you know how much I miss dancing. And it was the one thing my mom and I used to do together.
Making her demise all the more dire. I know she only spent about a week on that set. I don't know how much she really dove into that character's mindset, but she really allowed that character's presence to stick throughout a 7-episode run. That's a tall order.
Great people, week of work, sort of
thought it was going to be slightly easy, but it was deceivingly difficult to portray a character that you cared enough about to be thinking for the whole 7 episodes.
I love this series a lot. It's a bit wobbly when it comes to its pacing and also how each subplot's runtime is proportioned. There's kind of a twist introduced in the last 20 minutes of the finale episode that can kind of either make it or break it for you, and personally, I thought it was a bit hyperbolic. While I found its aftermath to be challenging and reflective, the reveal itself was a bit unbelievable considering how grounded everything felt up to that point, but that's just how I feel. I thought the conflict within the family was what really held this whole show together. Jean Smart is so funny, and Julianne Nicholson specifically is kind of the heart of this story. Personally, I think Mare Sheehan should be ranked among some of the best fictional characters of the last 10 years or so. A character written with such potent detail, and it's all brought to life by one of the greatest actresses in the world. The show had plenty of flaws, there were highs, there were lows, but I think overall this was a very beautiful, gripping, deeply human story about love, forgiveness, and truth. It was very meaty, very dense, and personally, I think it's the best thing Cailee Spaeny has ever been in, but that could definitely change because she's already booked and busy for years to come. Anyway, I just wanted to cover this woman's entire filmography. I think it's just so interesting how she's decided to pick such unique roles. Even if the project itself isn't that great, like The Craft Legacy is not a good movie, but it's a fascinating career choice. Cailee is such a versatile actress. She has this type of work ethic that I deeply admire. Someone that's willing to challenge themselves, someone that loves the craft, someone that loves film and filmmaking and is clearly so grateful to be a part of telling beautiful stories. As someone who loves film as both a form of escapism as well as artistic empathy, drawing parallels with real life, seeing someone like Cailee Spaeny leading a career based on pure love and devotion to being the aid to deliver the emotional center of the story is so motivating. When it seems like some performers are just so consumed with ego and public image over anything else, to see someone that's willing to throw themselves into anything, that has a pure curiosity, that's in it for the right reasons, someone that is trying new things and taking advantage of their very luxurious position to take on whatever they feel will push them in their field, that's amazing. She just has a lot of dedication, sheer commitment that took years of rejection to finally get to a point where she feels comfortable expanding her artistic horizons. It's very refreshing and hopeful to see. I do want to point out that I do recognize there are a lot of other actors working right now that have a similar level of genuine love and dedication to their job, but I just wanted to specifically point out Cailee for this video, so I just wanted to make that clear. I think Cailee Spaeny is the most exciting actor working right now. Her success story is so inspiring, her love for film is infectious, she's just so talented and driven and beautiful and incredibly charismatic. I am beyond thrilled to see what she does next with her very promising career. I just wanted to say that, and yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching. See ya.